The entire city knew Arthur Sterling as a ruthless billionaire who never showed mercy, but nobody knew the secret locked inside his private mansion. I had worked as his head housekeeper for 3 years, quietly cleaning his halls, dusting his priceless art, and raising my 3-year-old son, Noah, in the small staff quarters in the back. I stayed invisible, did my job, and never asked questions. Until yesterday morning, when a single broken vase changed everything. It was an antique porcelain urn, worth more than I would make in 5 lifetimes, and it shattered into 1,000 pieces on the cold marble floor. I didn't break it. Mr. Sterling's arrogant nephew had knocked it over while rushing out the door, but when the billionaire walked into the foyer, his nephew pointed his finger straight at me. Before I could even explain, Sterling looked at me with cold, lifeless eyes and fired me on the spot. He didn't just fire me. He called security, and my tiny room searched, and threw all of Noah's clothes into black trash bags on the driveway. He looked down at me as I knelt on the wet asphalt, trying to pack my toddler's tiny shoes into a ripped bag. "You are dirt, Marcus," he sneered, loud enough for all the staff to hear. "You and your bastard son are nothing. Get off my property before I have you thrown in jail." My chest burned with rage and shame, but I held Noah tight against my chest and walked out into the pouring rain. We had nowhere to go, no savings left, and the cold wind was freezing my boy's tiny hands. We walked for 2 miles until we found shelter under the rusted awning of a closed gas station. Noah was shivering, his tiny fingers blue, clutching his favorite toy, a toy plastic phone with glowing buttons that I had bought him from a dollar store. I sat on the damp concrete, burying my face in my hands, silently weeping as I realized I couldn't even afford a motel room for the night. I felt like the worst father in the world. That was when Noah pressed the red button on his toy phone. But it wasn't playing a nursery rhyme. The toy screen lit up with a real digital dialer, showing a live cellular connection, and a heavy, gravelly voice answered on the speakerphone. "Code Alpha confirmed." The deep voice echoed through the quiet night. "Is the child safe? Speak immediately." I froze, my breath catching in my throat, staring at the plastic toy in my toddler's hands. Noah put the plastic receiver to his ear, his voice sweet and innocent. "Uncle Dark, Daddy is crying in the rain. A mean man kicked us out." There was a 5-second pause on the line, a silence so heavy and terrifying that even the sound of the falling rain seemed to stop. "Where are you, little one?" the voice asked, completely devoid of emotion, yet dripping with absolute danger. Noah looked around, pointing his small hand at the street sign, at the big red sign with the flying horse. "Stay right there," the voice replied. 30 seconds. Before I could even grasp what was happening, 3 black armored SUVs slammed their brakes right in front of the gas station, their tires screaming against the wet pavement. 6 men in tailored black suits and tactical vests stepped out into the rain, moving with terrifying military precision. The man in the lead was tall, scarred, and carried an aura of absolute authority that made the air feel thin. He didn't look at me. He walked straight to Noah, dropped to one knee on the dirty pavement, and gently touched my son's cheek. "You called the emergency line?" "Little commander," the scarred man said softly. "Who made your father cry?" Noah pointed his little finger back down the road toward the mountain. "The mean old man in the castle." The man stood up, turned his piercing green eyes toward me, and held out a gloved hand. "Get in the truck, Marcus. It's time you learned who your late wife actually was, and why Arthur Sterling just signed his own death warrant." My jaw dropped as I sat in the leather seat of the armored vehicle, my heart pounding like a war drum. For 3 years, I believed my late wife, Sarah, was just a simple schoolteacher who had died in a tragic car accident before Noah was born. But as the convoy sped through the dark highway, the scar man turned around from the front seat and handed me an encrypted tablet. "Your wife wasn't a teacher, Marcus," he said, his voice deadly serious. "She was the founder and commander of Prometheus, the largest private intelligence firm in North America. When she died, she left her entire empire, her wealth, and her private military network to your son." I stared at the screen in disbelief as billions of dollars in offshore accounts, corporate shares, and global assets flickered before my eyes under Noah's legal name. That toy phone, the man continued, was a hardwired satellite communicator linked directly to our war room. It was only meant to be activated if Sarah's bloodline was in extreme danger. The vehicle took a sharp turn, heading straight back toward the iron gates of Arthur Sterling's grand estate. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice trembling as I held Noah closer. The commander adjusted his jacket, a chilling smile forming on his face. "Arthur Sterling thinks he ruined a poor housekeeper's life tonight. He has no idea he just declared war on the most dangerous organization in the country." Within 10 minutes, our convoy rammed right through the heavy iron gates of the Sterling mansion, shattering the golden lock into pieces. Alarm sirens echoed across the courtyard, and Arthur Sterling came rushing out onto the front porch in his silk bathrobe, surrounded by his personal security guards, screaming with fury. "What is the meaning of this?" Sterling roared, his face red with rage. "I will have you all arrested. Do you know who I am?" The heavy doors of our SUV opened, and I stepped out onto the marble driveway, holding Noah in my arms, backed by a dozen heavily armed operatives. When Sterling saw my face, his eyes went wide with sheer confusion, then shifted to contempt. "Marcus? You brought a gang of thugs to my home? You pathetic trash." "Shut your mouth, Arthur," the commander interrupted, stepping forward and tossing a thick black folder onto the marble stairs at Sterling's feet. Sterling sneered, picking up the folder with trembling hands, but as he opened the first page, all the color drained from his face. His knees buckled, and he almost collapsed right there on the porch. This is impossible," Sterling whispered, his voice trembling uncontrollably. "How do you have these?" Inside that folder were tax evasion records, illegal offshore accounts, and evidence of human trafficking linked directly to Sterling's shipping companies, enough to send him to prison for 3 life sentences. "Your entire empire was built on loans funded by Prometheus subsidiaries," the commander said, his voice echoing through the quiet courtyard. "And 5 minutes ago, the owner of Prometheus signed an order to call in every single debt you owe." Sterling looked at the commander in terror. Who owns Prometheus? I'll pay whatever they want. Please." The commander slowly moved aside and pointed straight at my 3-year-old son sitting in my arms. "He does," the commander said coldly. "And 5 minutes ago, his father authorized us to seize this house, your accounts, and every breath of freedom you have left." Sterling's eyes snapped to Noah, then to me, absolute horror filling his soul as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. The man who had treated me like dirt, who had thrown my son's clothes into trash bags, was now staring at the child who held his entire life in his tiny hands. "Marcus, please." Sterling dropped to his knees on the wet stone, tears streaming down his arrogant face as he reached out toward my shoes. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Forgive me, please. I'll give you half my company. Just don't ruin me." I looked down at the billionaire begging on the floor, the same man who had laughed at my pain just 2 hours ago. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt a cold, unstoppable strength. "I don't want your money, Sterling," I said quietly, holding my son higher. "You told me I was dirt. You told me my son was nothing." I turned my back on him as 6 federal agents stepped out from the shadows of the convoy, pulling out handcuffs to drag Sterling away in front of his entire domestic staff. "Take everything he owns," I told the commander without looking back, "and leave him with nothing." As we walked back into the warmth of the mansion that now belonged to my son, Noah leaned against my shoulder, yawning as his eyes grew heavy. "Daddy," he whispered, pressing his little face into my neck. "Are we home now?" I kissed the top of his head, looking out at the morning sun breaking through the dark clouds, knowing that no one in this world would ever push us around again. "Yes, baby," I smiled, holding him tight. "We are home, and nobody can ever hurt us again."